and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero, and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but good thing for me, there was almost no relationship-related activities that happened in this episode, so doesn't feel like it's going to matter in this episode.
I guess time will tell as we get more into our discussion tonight.
Yep. But here we are, episode 4, season 29, Grant Ellis.
That's right.
Halfway through the season, right?
Halfway through this journey. Here we are. We're going to get into all of the events of episode 4. But before we do, please be sure to hit that like button at the bottom of this video and hit subscribe. We love our growing community. We love all the action in our comments. And hitting subscribe also make sure that you get what we have coming out for you, which is, we're doing 2 shows at once right now.
We are, yes.
So you're going to want to subscribe.
And one of those shows is very, very fascinating.
Is it this one?
Hang out and find out. But please also make sure to hit that bell icon so that you can be alerted anytime we post new content to the channel.
All right. Where to begin?
I think it's safe to say we know why the Bachelorette season was canceled. Not a lot of, I would say, compelling characters that we would want to see as a Bachelorette, I think. A lot of villains, and a lot of people that I just don't think are shining in a way that the Bachelor series needs them to, which is a little disappointing because we were really high on this cast. But it feels like we were wrong in our predictions. At this point, outside of Latia and Alex, is there anybody that you're really rooting for, you really love in this cast? Not saying you dislike, but you're actively rooting for.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, I think, remains my top contestant at the moment. And Latia, as I've said the last few weeks, like shining bright, she's radiant inside and out. And what's not to like about her?
Mm-hmm. I think this also demonstrates why we saw no marketing for this season. It's kind of falling apart fast. It's centered around very targeted drama of 1 or 2 people. It's not really even compelling drama in a lot of ways. And Grant is just not showing up in a way that we would need him to as a strong lead. He's not really controlling the situation as would be expected of a lead. It's just it's really feels like it's kind of come off the rails.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like it's coming apart at the seams a bit.
Yep.
Which is such a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, I like Grant so much.
Yeah.
I don't know why he continually finds himself in situations to be manipulated and continually, falls prey to that. But it's just becoming a pattern now. We'll get into some of the events of this episode, but it's just disappointing to see because I think he's got 2 very solid candidates,
right?
That are both, very spousal worthy. But I just don't know if he will be able to see his way through the forest, to either of those people at this point, because he's getting knocked off the path for real nonsense.
I know. I mean, yeah. Well, let's before we get too far ahead, let's kind of start from the top, because I know that what you're referring to is the Carolina of it all, and she's already taken up so much time of the contestants. We only want to give her only but so much time here.
That's fair. So you're telling me you want to move on to good date, bad date?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. For those of you who have forgotten, Good Date, Bad Date is the segment where we talk about the dates, just the date activities, and discuss whether or not we like them as dates, and if we do like them, when it would be appropriate to do them, and kind of grade them according to how we feel about them. So we get the classic 2 one-on-ones and 1 group date. The first date is the time immemorial classic. We're going to walk around town and do a bunch of activities. Historically, we've liked this date. I still think I like this date. A lot of one-on-one time. You get to interact in a lot of different settings. This instance of it, I think I like less than some of the other instances, but it's still, on the whole, a pretty strong date.
I mean, this one was definitely, a little bit more focused maybe on the cultural activities of Madrid. They, made wishes, they played soccer with kids, they did some dancing. And so I think anytime there is this kind of date, it's, again, something that you could simulate in the real world. If we were going to Madrid, we would probably do some of those things. Maybe not so much the soccer with the kids, but the other stuff I could see us doing to some degree. So I think, for what it is, an about town, exploring a new city date, I still think it's a good date.
Yep, agree. All right, so the next date is donkey riding, then bullfighting, then bull riding.
Okay, hear me out.
There is an after party. I'm just gonna. There is an after party involved here. Okay,
listen,
it's not a complete total loss.
I think if these were 3 separate dates, taking them completely separate, I think it could be fun. I mean, donkey riding in some
Who
sort of.
Who are you?
Hold on.
Where are you?
I'm not necessarily the date participant.
No.
But riding a donkey around town, seeing the sights, fine. We know how we feel about horseback riding dates. They're not they don't really bring people together in terms of being able to converse, but
it's usually front to back, people craning their necks, hard to have conversations.
But you could maybe see some sights. Sure. I could also see a world in which some sort of matadora practice or class could be fun. And then doing a bull riding competition. Again,
if it's at a bar and you've got 3 beers in you.
Sure. Yes. So again, taken separately and maybe different settings for especially the bull one, I could see where it could be fun. Put all together, it just felt like they spoke to the Madrid tourism board and were they were in Chichon.
Yeah.
And they were like, we'll be here. Just what do you need us to do? And they're like, let's just pick these 3 things and try to fit them together. So as a date itself, that must have been a very exhausting date and a little all over the place.
So you know how I know this was a terrible date? On this franchise, you are basically contractually obligated to pretend to like everything that happens. And even the girls, every one of them, was not happy with this date. And they were
never
vocal
really heard them talk that critically about.
That's how you know, fellas, this is not a date to take your girls. When literally people who are contractually obligated to pretend like they like everything that's happening can't even hold it in, and even they are flat out no, then stay away from this one. All right.
Right. They even show the crowd at the date, and they were so disinterested too. I mean, that was funny. But yeah. So this altogether wasn't a great date.
I mean, it was really hanging its hat on the after party.
Yeah.
That's really there was no one-on-one time.
Got to get through these 3 things to get to the after party.
Yeah. And even it was terrible. I mean, the after party was the whole date, really. And then we go to bridge jumping. And a dinner.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row of a high, something that you jump off of. It's
Gen Trans season did the same thing.
That's true. Yeah,
and 4 of these. Yeah.
This was again not quite a bungee.
This was bridge jumping. Yeah, well, it wasn't even bridge jumping. It was halfway between a bungee and a swing off a bridge. It was
raining.
It was raining, and Saraphina seemed to really care a lot that it was raining. I don't quite get.
They both did because they were wondering if it was safe.
Well, it's water. It's just water.
Oh my God. What did you think of this date?
Look, I think it's again the worst version of this date. Right, same thing as the first date walking around town. We've seen this date in a multitude of different settings. I think it has opportunities to show how you'll be as a partner, how you'll deal with stressful situations, how you'll deal with anxiety in yourself and in a partner, how you will cope and support one another. I think there's a lot of things that you can glean from this about your partner, which is important information. So it's not without its value. But again, we've seen this date so many times over the seasons, and this is like the worst version of this date. I mean, it was even worse than the rappelling off the building, right? Yeah. What was that last week? It was definitely worse than the 2 or 3 different versions of this in Gen Trans season, right? So it's just, again, I'm like, where is the budget? Yeah, everything about the dates this season have just been lackluster.
It's just everything about the season, like you were saying, the lack of marketing, the lack of dates, like. I don't know. I mean, let's not even I'll get way ahead to the rose ceremony with the women out there with their jackets.
Oh
Like,
my God.
do they not invest in heat lamps? Come
Well, forget about heat lamps. I mean, why are you
outside?
Are you telling me that if every girl is wearing a jacket and the jackets look terrible on top of their dresses, that you don't have the budget to just move it inside? Come on. But anyway, let's not get too far ahead. But yeah, that was. I mean, you might be spoiling my. I might have to come up with that. I'm sorry, my thorn. You might have to come up with a new thorn now. But yeah,
I just want to know how the dates during the COVID seasons, and I'm thinking specifically Tayshia and Claire's season, where they were confined to a La Quinta in Palm Springs, were somehow
not even a good hotel. They were at the La Quinta. Oh my God.
Then this is wild.
Yeah.
This is really wild. Anyway, so
hey, look, at least it was a dinner. Right.
Sure.
Again,
it was a dinner.
You're hanging your hat on the dinner.
Yeah.
So if you have some one-on-one time and you have a dinner, it at least is a C, right? Sure. I mean, but lackluster dates this week. Really
hopefully next week when we're in Scotland, it'll be a little better. I mean, we said that this week for Madrid, but maybe Scotland. I don't know.
I hear Scotland's beautiful. Everyone tells me that we have to visit, but hasn't made it on the list yet. All right, so let's give the 10-second backstory for everyone to remind them. The drama is with Carolina and with Rose, but really Carolina with everybody. People are finding her to be annoying and ungrateful and lacking self-awareness. I think that editing and production is definitely leaning into that narrative. Rose is very upset because she feels betrayed by Carolina for saying something that was told to her in confidence, but at the same time would have theoretically, if it was said, would have been insulting to Carolina. So it's unclear to me why Rose would. None of it makes sense. Go back and watch last week's episode. So that's sort of the backstory of.
Hold on, though. Wait, yeah. I think that you're doing what Carolina's doing, and we didn't roll the tape, right? Like we didn't see the full tape. The entire internet, if you were any little bit online, you saw the replay and the recap of what happened the week before. And I'm sorry that I'm not referencing your name right now in the comments, but one of you amazing viewers in our comments last week and last week's episode put the exchange in our comments as well. So thank you so much for that. So I had referenced that before I even saw the video surface. And so the exchange was basically Grant giving her reassurance and saying, even while up there dancing on that stage, I was still thinking of you. Now, it's possible that Rose could have just said that to Carolina in whatever context they were she thought she was confiding in. And Carolina, as she does, makes everything about her. And that must have been when Grant was dancing with me that he was saying that he was thinking about her. Meanwhile, it could have been when they were doing the group dance, the Backstreet Girls, who knows? But Carolina that's what I wrote down is she thinks she is the star of this show. She is the star of this movie, and that everything revolves around her. And so again, for all we know, I'm back on Rose not being messy about this. I'm back on, she was just having a conversation with someone that she thought she trusted, and Carolina made it all about her. We see enough evidence in this episode to understand that Carolina is just very egocentric.
I agree with all of that. But the problem is, I don't think you can come to that conclusion. There's clearly a miscommunication or there's a lie, right? The miscommunication could be, as you just mentioned, that, Rose said exactly what Rose reiterated exactly what Grant said and Carolina misinterpreted. It could be that Rose misinterpreted Grant and relayed it to Carolina incorrectly, but her thinking that it was honest. Or it could have been that Rose heard the correct thing and specifically said a lie to Carolina. Or Rose could have said the right thing to Carolina and Carolina lied about it to Grant. Right? There are 4 possibilities.
I think
here.
The first one is the most likely, and it's the least villainous. Like it's the least intentionally.
The one being that Rose
relayed what happened and Carolina misinterpreted it.
Sure, that's possible.
That's the most empathetic view.
My counter to that, though, would be Rose's response to Grant. If I was Rose in that situation, I would be more emphatic, saying, "No, I said X, not Y." And instead, she's like, "Well," no, she kind of said that she
because Grant said he didn't make it about what Rose told Carolina. He made it about what he said to her. And so she kept saying, Yeah, but you did say that.
Well, I have to go back and roll the tape to see exactly what his statement
Grant
to Rose
really
was.
only
but
cared about how this reflected on his character.
Agreed, yeah.
He didn't really care what Rose specifically said. He just cared
Fair.
to say, I didn't say that specific thing. And so all of this to
So
say...
he might have also not really been paying that close attention to the specific...
Emotions are running high. As I've said so many times on this podcast, when our emotions are running high, we lose logic, we lose rationality, and we get really dumb. Like, we are not thinking with our full brain when emotions are up there. So Carolina's not thinking with her full brain. I'm sure in that moment, Grant wasn't thinking in his full brain. They were both reacting. And therefore, it's like a game of telephone. So all of this to say, this is what's in the context. Not only, as you pointed out at the beginning, Rose being frustrated and upset with Carolina's betrayal, but also the entire house is now feeling so resentful because the whole night of the rose ceremony became about one person's feelings, and that one person was Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the backdrop for this entire episode.
And so what you're telling me is that this is bad communication between potential husband and wives.
Across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Across the board.
Yep. Okay. Shall we move on to the one-on-one date with Dena?
Yes.
So it's the classic, all the girls go out for some drink. In this case, it's sangria. Grant shows up and pulls one of them. We see this script all the time. This one, it felt like they made it pretty clear that it was going to be Dena. I
thought it was going to be Juliana. You said
really?
that.
I thought it was so obviously going to be Dena. And it's the walking around date, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to... I just want to give two quotes, and I want to get your feelings on two quotes. Okay. Emotions are weakness. I am an ice queen. I'm paraphrasing. Those are not the exact quotes.
Feelings make you weak. Don't show someone you're sad. I'm an ice queen.
I'm a little bit of an ice queen, I think was the exact quote.
But I can melt for people who deserve it.
Yeah. Thoughts? They seem compatible to you?
Well, Grant comes into this saying that he is emotionally available. And then we hear Dena tell us and him that she is not very emotionally available. So in this case, they seem like they are at two different readiness points. I could understand why Dena could feel like emotions are weak. It sounds like that was a big part of her family culture. And there is a narrative around emotions being weak. I personally, even as a therapist, and this might be controversial to say, I hate that I have emotions. I hate them. They're very informative, and don't get me wrong, I know that they're important, but like they do make me feel like I am weak when I feel like I can't control them, or I feel like they get in the way of me doing the things that I need to do. I wish that I could just be a robot sometimes. And so I could relate to what Dena is saying in a way about emotions or feelings make you weak. They make you more vulnerable, and that can make you feel weak. That can make you feel more susceptible to getting hurt and more open to risk. All of that is actually true. But her lack of maybe comfort with taking that risk is probably going to present an issue here.
Counterpoint?
Sure.
In the Star Wars universe, the Sith are more powerful than the Jedi one for one because they feed the Force with their emotions. And that makes them significantly more powerful than one Sith versus one Jedi. So I'm just saying, not in all universes are emotions a weakness. That being said, in this universe, they definitely make you more vulnerable. But look, if you are going into a relationship and going into a courtship of any kind, not thinking that you need to be vulnerable, you are concerned about having guards up, and you are concerned about your level of weakness, then you are just simply not really understanding what you're getting yourself into, and not really understanding what it means to be in a marriage.
No, of course. Well, and it doesn't seem like she's saying, yeah, I can get by like this. I think she's saying, this is something that I know about myself. This is something I've received feedback on, people referring to her as an ice queen. And so she knows that she does need to melt at a certain point. And her whole thing is that the right man will get you to be vulnerable, essentially. And that that's in part true, but you also need to be willing to take the risk. And so it's not just up to someone else to get you to melt and to open up. It's up to you too. And I don't know. Do you feel like we got to see Dena let her walls down a little bit?
No, she's extremely performative. But I'm reminded of what's that quote? If you wait to be ready, you'll never do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I feel about this. Like, you're waiting for the right man to make you melt. Well, I'm sorry. Like, you've got to, you got to be thawing yourself a little bit out. Because here's the thing. We all give off some aura, we'll say, right? Some energy, when you walk into a room, like, you can feel somebody who's confident. You can feel somebody who's intimidated. You can feel somebody who's anxious, right? It's just something about the way we present ourselves. And when you walk into a room and you present yourself as, walled off, guarded, or an ice queen, then you're never going to actually meet the man who's going to melt you, because he's going to be turned off and moving on. He's looking for somebody who's going to be open. And swap the sexes and it's the exact same situation, right? If you walk in there confident, then girls will automatically be more interested in you, all else being equal, right? And we can see this as evidence of this in all of our lives every single day, right? And so I think a lot of her quotes are just these front end quotes. There's quotes later on that present other problems for Dena. But I think these front end quotes are just, slamming us in the face, the reality that she is not in a place where she really understands, like, and is ready to get into a committed relationship.
Well, not with Grant specifically.
I mean, Grant, no. We're going to get to Grant specifically in a second. I mean, period, right? So to get to Grant specifically, okay. I got a lot of thoughts on this, but I'll try to make them succinct. Basically, they have completely different opinions on gender roles. They have completely differing views on who should be the provider in a relationship and how a relationship should be structured. And she thinks that the life that Grant wants is a lonely life. You guys are miles apart. Like, this isn't small time stuff. Grant had said something to the effect of, I have not even ever considered, her perspective on this. Her perspective is a completely different values paradigm from you. Like, this isn't like, oh, hey, I didn't ever think that maybe I should eat tuna instead of salmon. This is, holy cow, this is a completely different worldview.
Well, what you're referring to, do you want to share the quotes? Because you're...
you probably wrote them down better than me. I paraphrase everything.
So they're having this conversation about, essentially about Grant's upbringing. He kind of goes off a little bit when Dena was talking about, her strength, essentially, and him saying, like, that's really intriguing. It reminds me a lot of my mom. It seems like that's something that he shared with her before. And then he sort of goes on to say, I really wanted my mom to have a break, so I tried to do as much for myself as I possibly could, and feeling like that was very manly of him, his responsibility as a man. And then Dena said it's manlier to know that a woman could also provide.
Most cringy thing in this entire episode was that quote. Yeah.
And then he also, she then asks him about his previous relationship, which we've heard him allude to in the past. It was 7 years, on again, off again. And he was saying, in retrospect, I was selfish in that relationship because I put my career ahead of our relationship. And she said, oh, you prioritize your career over your relationship. And he said, well, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as I was doing this, my career, for us, for our future. But in retrospect, I could see how she didn't see it that way. And I thought it was providing for the future. And so this is, I think, what you're alluding to here as them having different values and different paradigms as it relates to relationships.
And I want to come to back to Grant's response. I actually really liked Grant's response here. What he basically said was that he didn't recognize the fact that he was neglecting an aspect of the relationship. The relationship, he wasn't seeing the relationship holistically. He saw it as, his job and his duty is this piece over here, and this other stuff was it also important, but he didn't even recognize it, so he neglected it. But he didn't view it as neglect because he didn't even know it was important. And it wasn't until he came out of that relationship and was able to reflect back on it that he realized, oh, okay, I also have to focus on, yes, this is the priority, but I have to spend at least a little time focusing over here. And we've all been there. Right. We've all, those of us who have been in relationships, who have, been married, have all been in that. And if you haven't been in that, then you're in it right now. You just haven't realized it yet, is my response. Relationships are complicated. Marriages are work. And there's a lot of learning and feeling, and everyone will make mistakes. And everyone will let certain balls drop at times, and everyone will neglect certain things. Certainly I have, certainly you have. The important thing is the communication, right? So I love to see that Grant came to this conclusion. It's a little concerning it took him 7 years, but hey, we all learn at our own rates, right? But I love this because it showed, it's one of the best answers to a question like this I've ever heard on a reality TV show. And I think a lot of people probably aren't going to appreciate what he actually said here.
There were a couple of moments where Grant shined. We're halfway through. I'm coming away a Grant fan, I have to say, because there are times,
he's an incredibly likable guy.
He's very self-aware, and there are times in this episode where, and it's not the first time, where he asks very good, pointed, direct questions. He is thoughtful, and he has done enough of his own work. Well, he's done a good amount of his own work, and you can see that. And you can get, to your point, this is a good, well thought, well reflected answer, not a surface level, oh, I was young, or oh, I've learned a lot. Like this makes a lot of sense. And I was happy to hear that from him. I appreciated hearing that from him. But yeah, I mean, to your point, they do seem to just see roles and relationships really differently. And it's not that people can't change. It's just, I don't know that people can change that much.
This is a chasm. And I don't think, he's got to know that this is a chasm. She has to know. I mean, he has been so unbelievably clear. He wants a wife and a mother of his children. He wants to be the provider, right? Dena she's a lawyer. She's spent a lot of time, focusing on her career. She wants to continue that career, and she wants to split the provider role. All right. Well, if Grant wants to be the provider and she wants 50% of the provider, that's 150% of provider. Who's doing that the other pieces, right? It's not a fit. They just don't fit, right? And that's why it's like frustrating. Because look, everybody on this show who goes on a one-on-one date gets a rose. It's so frustrating and disingenuous.
It didn't always used to happen that way.
But it needs to go back to that, because like if you have eyes and even like the first thing about compatibility, Dena's not supposed to get a rose here, right? They're just not compatible. And it's so frustrating. It's like, oh, she's going to get a rose because it's a one-on-one date, and that's one rose that can't go to somebody else. And
I do wonder how much of it is being caught in the moment and kind of thinking like kind of how he had said after, like, wow, I never really thought of it that way. And then just kind of getting caught up in like the what ifs and this beautiful romantic.
Well, it's also a lot harder one-on-one to crush somebody and dump them. It's a lot easier in a group setting, right? And so, I think that there's always a small amount of cowardice, as a result of that. They also supposedly have a decent amount of say in who gets the one-on-ones. And so, I think it's tough to sit there and say, you get the one-on-one because I wanted to spend time with you. And at the end of the date, it's like, oh, sorry, you weren't good enough. I think a bachelorette can get away with that much easier than a bachelor can get away with that.
It's been done, but not in a while.
Yeah.
But she does end up getting the rose. So she's safe for the week.
Yep. And just a quick cut over to the hotel. Everyone's still getting annoyed with Carolina because she just keeps talking, and nobody is pleased with anything she has to say. But we do get the date card that comes, and Alex, Latia, Carolina, Natalie, Rose, Parisa, Zoe, and Juliana are going on it.
Right. Love is a wild ride is on the date card.
It was not wild. They definitely did a lot of riding, though. Yeah, they show up on some street It's a cool little street. You know, it had a nice little small, villagey, old-timey feel to it. It had a nice vibe to it, right? They bring the donkeys out. The girls hate it. They go ride the donkeys around town. We've already talked about it. Not a great situation here. I don't think that anybody really enjoyed it. And then they end up having to go do the bullfighting, which is fake bulls that are being basically wheelbarrows being pushed by Grant with GoPros on them. I'm not really sure what the GoPro was doing there, but okay, fine.
Well, for the footage.
I mean, he's a guy running and pushing a wheelbarrow. It's not like he's, he's not Superman. He's not the Flash. Like, what are we talking about here, right? Might as well put the GoPro on him.
Maybe that's where all the budget went.
Maybe it was all these extra GoPros, yeah.
Latia takes small advantage of this and kind of, as he's running by, kind of grabs him and has a kiss, which, good for you, Latia.
Yep. And I also want to note that while the girls don't love it, Latia has credibility in the house, being upstanding, being unproblematic. It wasn't like
a makeout. It was a quick peck.
And so the girls all kind of let it pass with no issues whatsoever. Or if there are, they got edited out, which is possible because I do hear that production really likes Latia and is pushing her narrative as a quality future star within the Bachelor series, assuming she doesn't win this. But yeah, Carolina is doing all the narration of this event.
Hating it.
So then from there, we move on to the bull riding, which is exactly what you'd think, a fake mechanical bull. All the girls hop on. They all get flung pretty quickly, except for Alex. Goes with a unconventional style. And manages, what was she on, like
47 seconds.
Was it 47 seconds? Okay, yeah.
She literally grabbed the bull by the horns and just held on for nearly a minute.
There's just something about Alex that's just so fun.
I know.
But here's the problem. We are now into the third activity of the date and nothing has happened of interest. Nothing, by interest, I mean from a relationship perspective. So hours have passed and production has showed us no meaningful contribution to anybody's relationship, no meaningful change, no meaningful time together.
Yeah.
How is this anything other than a failure in the eyes of every one of the women? Latia steals a kiss. That's like the highlight.
Well, anyway. They are doing this mechanical bull riding thing in order to win extra time with Grant. And so Zoe sort of takes a page out of Alex's book and uses Alex's strategy with Zoe's own, wrestling prowess, and she ends up winning. We didn't see how many seconds she was on. They didn't give us the clock for that, but it was presumably more than 47 seconds. So she gets some extra time with Grant.
Yep. Did she use the time wisely?
I mean, they kissed. Good for them.
Yeah. It feels like it was like a 5-minute thing.
She was less uptight. Well, we'll get to that. Yeah. But she was starting to thaw at this point.
Well, I think Carolina has just taken she was the early villain.
Right. Yeah. Carolina's
taken all of the heat. Yeah. I said this in our Love is Blind podcast earlier this week. When your enemies are doing something dumb, don't interrupt them. Right. And, it's one of those things where Zoe was taking the fire and now Carolina, is taking the heat. Don't interrupt her. If you're like the backup villain or somebody who's had the villain status sort of like slowly taken away from you, don't interrupt the new villain. Just let him be the villain.
Yeah.
And so but yeah, I mean, do I still like Zoe? No, we're gonna have to see a lot more episodes of her on better behavior for me to thaw to her again, which is disappointing because if you remember from the preview episode, she was one of the people I was really interested to see. Because on paper, I should really like her, but she did a lot of damage in those first couple episodes. All right, so let's go to the after party. So we what did we see? 3 kind of one-on-one times: Parisa, Rose, and Zoe. They're really not a ton. Parisa just being Parisa.
Well, he wants to make her feel special and brings her some rocks. We know from her intro package, she's a rock collector, and it seems like they also had a conversation about her getting rocks from different places that she travels. So sweet gesture for Parisa.
Yep.
Rose, they're just kind of like touching base from the week before, and Grant basically saying, I feel like there's room for growth here, so giving her a little reassurance. And then Zoe was the most meaningful, connection, and she comes in saying, I'm trying to work on my emotional availability. And Grant, again, this is a time with Grant that he says point blank, you come off as stoic and like you're trying to mask something. And good for you, Grant. I was not expecting him to be so direct, but good for you. And it was fruitful because that caused Zoe to be really open about her experience, and that that contributed to her being more closed off. And she talks about her experience growing up in the South, being adopted in and living in a mostly predominantly white family, or I'm sorry, white town, and feeling like as one of the very few Black people, she didn't feel beautiful. She didn't feel like she was attractive. And she was like the black sheep. And so that is what caused her to kind of put a wall up. Makes sense.
And I feel like this was another moment where Grant mostly shined. I thought his response was solid. It was validating. He didn't kind of linger. He kind of validated and came forth with more of kind of an uplifting, kind of message and tone. So I thought this was not as good as how he performed early in the episode, but certainly this was a solid performance out of him.
Right. And it was something, it seems like he said resonated with him, something that they can relate on. And I think there was something about her sharing a hardship that she went through that was endearing to Grant. Grant wants to be a protector. Grant wants to be a provider. And so I think him seeing a little like chink in the armor or whatever the expression is, it was helpful to him.
Yeah. Anything else on Zoe?
No, she cried a lot. I wasn't expecting that.
She's fair. She's cried a little bit this season. So back on the couches, Juliana, I mean, I don't know how many times we see this play. It never works for anybody.
I know.
Leave it alone.
Well, it's one of those things. So they're getting annoyed. I mean, Carolina's there talking about how she has lots of unanswered questions. She's not sure if he's right for her. How do you even get engaged after having just one date? Just kind of like doubting the process all in all. And again, popping out and thinking about this from like the real world, she's not wrong.
Correct.
But like this is the experience that you're in. And like you have to kind of suspend some disbelief and kind of lean into it. But it's just growing frustrating, more and more frustrating to the other women because she continues to seem ungrateful and entitled. So Juliana decides, hey, I'm going to do the mature thing here. I'm going to just talk to her about it. Now, what she could have done is that she could have gone to Grant and said, hey, this woman is saying that she has lots of doubt. She could have gone to him. That would have been the worst thing that she could have done.
Well, she did that anyways.
Well, he invited her to do that.
Sure.
But so she...
So Juliana pulls Carolina.
Yeah.
The problem is that Juliana is coming at this from a kind of a holier than thou, right? She is, and Juliana had an awful look this episode. I feel like she failed across the board. She's trying to kind of look like the mature person, but she can't execute on it. She looks very petty. She looks, really immature. Carolina, and I'm a little sympathetic here to Carolina because she's kind of has a reaction I would have. I'd sit there, I'd listen to you and say, are you done? Don't care. Get out of my face.
Right.
And that's exactly what Carolina does expectantly. No one should have expected anything different from her. And Juliana doesn't really know how to respond to that because Juliana has pretty privilege. Nobody ever tells a pretty girl, like, oh, get out of my face. Like that's just not a thing that happens, right? Pretty people in general, they when they talk, people just listen and just kind of do things, right?
Well, and I think Carolina, again, in a lot of ways was like, I don't understand the point of this conversation.
Bingo.
And
she's right.
And she is correct because as I reflect back on it, I have the same question. Was the point to be like, hey girl, like,
be a friend?
Like, you are rubbing people the wrong way. I just want to give you the heads up. I know you're going through a hard time. We all are, but like the way that you're talking is rubbing people the wrong way. I just want to give you the heads up.
Problem is the tone and the language did not reflect friendly, informative.
No, but that wasn't the message. The message was, you clearly have doubts. If it were me, I would pack my bags. Yep. So it's like, well,
what was the purpose
What was
here?
the purpose? Were you trying to get her? Exactly.
It was an antagonistic approach. Absolutely 100%.
It was.
And that's the problem is whatever Juliana's intent, it came across unbelievably antagonistic and immature.
Right.
Which ultimately ends up making Carolina cry.
Mm-hmm.
And the second that Grant comes in the room, he sees her crying again, and he pulls he pulls Carolina.
You got to give him some. He tried to press on, and then like she just kept whimpering, and he's like, I guess I gotta go check.
Yeah, I mean, look, Carolina, don't give Carolina an in, right?
No.
And she'll take it every time. And Grant is just too much of a pushover in these situations. And so what ends up happening? The situation gets exacerbated because now Grant pulls Carolina to talk about why
more time.
More time, exactly. So all she's so Juliana's plan kind of backfired in some ways, right? So Grant and Carolina talk, and she basically says Juliana's being mean to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean that obviously is a manipulative play because she sat there with Juliana and was like, go F off, right? Like don't care. Not interested in this conversation. If she was really that upset, we would have seen a little bit more emotion. It's waterworks turn on when the cameras are on, or so to speak, the metaphorical cameras, right? And so, yeah. So Grant just, buys it.
What he basically does, this is again another moment where I appreciate Grant because he checks on her, and I wrote sadness plus drama equals time with Grant. That seems to be the equation. But Grant basically is like, listen, I know the situation with Juliana was upsetting, but let's just have the focus be on us.
Yeah.
Just focus on us. And that is what we've said with anyone that recaps this show or talks about the show, knows from experience. That's the name of the game, is try to block out the noise and ignore the drama and just focus on the connection and the relationship that you have with the lead. And so I like that he did that. But now they have this conclusion to this conversation. He comes back in where he was initially ready to give the rose. And now he's like, I need to consider something, so I'm not giving a rose tonight.
Yes. So we leave the group date on a cliffhanger. But I am a little happy about this because as I just got done saying, I am tired of every date ending in a rose. That's not realistic, So I'm. This isn't the date I would have picked to not have the rose. Though I don't know who you would even give it to in this situation.
Yeah, I wonder who he was going to give it to. I bet it was Zoe.
Well, my guess could have been Zoe because she finally did open up and be vulnerable. And that's the only other person production gave us, any footage of. It's either that or somebody else that we didn't get footage of. So anyway, from here we go on to Saraphina's one-on-one date.
I have barely any notes for this date.
Let's talk about Saraphina very quickly. She seems fine.
Yeah, sweet enough.
She's not a star. She doesn't have a future as an actress or an influencer or anything like that. She's fine. In a lot of ways, she is a budget Alex, right? Alex is also the sweet girl. She's just sweeter. She's also kind of the bubbly girl. She's just bubblier. She's also sort of the fun girl. She's just funner. She's kind of the cute girl. She's just cuter. It's like the problem with Saraphina is Alex is there. And Alex, on every axis on which Saraphina could theoretically compete, Alex has cut her off. So from a casting perspective, if I'm Saraphina, I'm like, crap. How do I beat out Alex? Because she is literally doing everything I can do. She's just doing it better.
Well, we just don't, as a viewer, that might be true, but we have no idea what the connections are.
Sure.
Do Alex and Grant have a romantic connection? I'm not sure. Do Saraphina and Grant? I don't know either. And so I think that's the X factor that we don't really know. But in Grant's own words, Saraphina is flying under the radar. And so I think she could be one of those dark horses that we have in every season that, again, flies under the radar. Think about Jeremy from Jen's season, kind of unproblematic, and he ends up at hometowns, right?
In our hometown. Your hometown, my adoptive town.
So, I could see Saraphina being someone like that.
Yeah.
But she also, in the night portion, kind of alludes to her being a little guarded or hesitant because she's very conscious of her mom watching, which would be me the entire time. Just imagining my parents watching me, kiss someone or just like do any of this stuff.
I kiss you in front of your parents all the time.
Well, it still makes
Usually
me...
you turn your face so I get your cheek, but you know.
But anyway, so that could also be a factor in like what we're actually seeing. It's just like her own, you know, awareness that of who's going to be watching, which in some ways I really actually respect a lot, and tells you about the way that she values her mom and wants to like respect her mom and things like that.
Don't we have some weird like 6 degrees of separation to Saraphina?
The way that I think that it is, and I guess Donna, if you're watching, you can confirm. So try to follow this thread.
Okay.
My dad's boss has a son-in-law who works with Saraphina.
Oh, okay. Your dad's boss has a son-in-law who works with Saraphina.
I think that's the connection.
You think that's the connection? Okay. That's like, you know, that's like legit. Like we could see them at a party sometime.
I'm not sure.
It's possible in the realm of possible. Are they friendly coworkers?
I have no idea.
Work in the same department.
I didn't want to know anything because, you know, whenever my mom starts relaying anything related to
she spoils
things, and I was like la la la, like I don't want to know where the end of this conversation goes.
Okay.
So
yep. Well, hey, Saraphina, we're basically cousins. So if you want to come on the pod, we'll have you. Right. I would like you to you know.
Well, after you just said she's like the less fun version of Alex, I don't know.
Hey, listen,
I didn't say that.
I am an honesty broker, right? I think she's a very nice young lady, right? She seems cool. She seems fun. It's just the problem is, like, look at, I am not the most fun guy in the room. I'm not always the most intelligent person in the room. I can acknowledge that there are people that are just operating on the same axis as me that just do it better than me. That is just a function of humanity. None of us are very, 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 very few of us are actually the best at what we do, right?
That's true. There should always be someone better at things than we are.
Yes.
And probably the people that we all will interact with, that should be the case.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So moving on.
She does get a rose.
She does get a rose, but this was another.
Oh, I guess we haven't got to the dinner yet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
okay.
they're at the dinner. They're talking about, you know, being a little hesitant for Saraphina to open up because her mom's watching. They then start talking about mom and the advice that she's gotten from her mom in the process, and then Saraphina basically talks about what it was growing up with a single mom and how that initially made her feel embarrassed because she really just wanted a more traditional family. And here's another moment where Grant shined. He asks a direct question: has it impacted you in a negative way? And how has this impacted you in relationships? Great questions.
I thought they were fantastic questions.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job, Grant.
Grant did great this episode.
I agree.
In his time with the women, he mostly did really well.
Yeah.
He didn't do well navigating a lot of the chaos and drama, but he did really well when it was time to get down to like finding out about the women.
Agree. Agree. And anyway, they have this good conversation about it. And she said, you know, my ideal life is being a mom and having a family. And she ends up getting the date rose. And he says something like, you know, she's someone who I could see as my future wife, like that kind of sentiment. So that was meaningful. She said she's falling in love. And he said that she was a slow burn where things now caught fire and there are sparks and chemistry here.
The only problem is, unless I missed it, I didn't actually see that on the screen.
No, me neither.
So I'm not sure how believable he's being right here and how much of it is just what he's supposed to say. She seems like a nice girl who's probably a pleasant person to be around, but like, I didn't see sparks on the screen. And I feel like if they were there, they would have showed it to us, because it's not like this episode was, you know, super exciting in other regards, right?
Yeah.
It needed some sparks. That's what this episode really needed. So.
All right. Then we move on to the rose ceremony. And
the cocktail party, but yeah.
Yeah, rose ceremony, cocktail party, where Rose kind of immediately starts off with, you know, at the group date, you know, things were unresolved and I want to immediately talk to Juliana. They have their conversation. Juliana presents a really different set of information than we actually heard communicated. I thought this was
There's a little bit of a recreation of history.
Little bit of a misrepresentation. She basically says, Carolina is nothing but negativity. She has judgments about you. There's no gratitude for this opportunity to date you. Like in kind of like knocking down Carolina, she was propping herself up. But it's effective in that Grant is sort of like, oh wow, he's hurt, and then immediately goes to kind of confront Carolina about this.
Yeah, so there's a couple things here. Juliana, another one who's never going to be an actress. It was so obvious that she was performing here, and it just like wasn't believable at all. You just thought the kind of, it was just overacting, right? And my frustration here is, Grant has already been manipulated a bunch this season. We know that he's a bit gullible. He really just bought this. And I mean, he's been manipulated a bunch, and a bunch of it I haven't found particularly believable, but this was maybe the worst acting performance we've seen of the entire season. And when he goes up to Carolina, it feels as though he doesn't even ask Carolina her side, doesn't even ask her, said, this is what I've heard. Is this true? He just goes into that conversation having taken what Juliana said as fact.
Right.
And that's my big problem here. This is one of the big missteps of Grant in this episode, especially since, we've seen some footage and we are questioning the validity of what Juliana has said here.
Right. Well, and I think the thing that I am starting to wonder about, I mean, spoiler, Carolina gets the last rose. But like, at what point does Grant have to say, okay, now this is the third week in a row where there is drama in the house and Carolina is at the center of it. The juice is just not worth the squeeze here. Like, clearly she's the common denominator.
Well, she's a production pick at this point.
Well, he still has a say, right? And then what point then do the women...
Production can't prevent him from sending somebody home.
But at what point do the women now turn on Carolina and say, Grant, what the fuck? Like, at a certain point, they're going to turn on him if he keeps making the same mistake over and over and over again.
Sure.
And that point is coming. So I hope it seems like next week's going to be more of the same. And so I hope that there's some conclusion to this, because we can't string an entire season on this. This is exhausting.
Problem is, what other drama do you have?
There's always more that they can generate.
I'm sure. But the problem is I mean, I guess Dena, you might be able to generate something with Dena, but
maybe.
She just seems like...
I mean, she seems to be at the heart of the drama next week. Well, not at the heart, Carolina is. But Dena this week, we see her, she's the one showing so much support to Carolina.
Full on alignment with Carolina.
And it was so awkward because this plant was like another contestant, and they're like kind of like reaching over and all the other women are like side-eyeing what's going on because it just seems so wildly contrary to everybody else's experience. But we see in the preview that doesn't last too long. Yeah.
There's one important thing about the Carolina Grant conversation that I want to talk about. Okay. So what Juliana basically is conveyed is that Carolina is suggesting that she has doubts. And Grant pulls Carolina to talk about that. And she's trying to defend the fact that she has doubts. That's not what Grant is actually upset about. What Grant is upset about, and I don't think Carolina fully understands here, is that she's talking to other people instead of him, right? And we've said this on this podcast many times, right? Like, you support each other in public and you go and you talk in private about your problems. You don't go and complain to your friends about the crap that your spouse did, right? Because everyone only sees like the negative side of things. No one ever remembers the good times, and people are overweight the bad stuff. The reality is,
and particularly if you've never addressed it with your significant other.
Yeah, and that as well, right? It's a bad communication strategy all around for a variety of reasons. What Grant is upset about here is that she is talking to other people about doubts instead of talking to him. Period. That's the problem. Right. And he is 100% justified in being upset here about that.
Yeah. He says, you should be coming to me with your doubts and me only.
Yep. And like, yes, that is one of the most insightful things he has said this entire season. And so I don't want it to pass without giving him tremendous credit for that. Yeah. So good job, Grant. I think more people need to understand that. Right. So yeah, with that, I'm happy to move on to the Rose drama, and by
Yeah.
Rose the person, not Rose the flower.
So while Grant is spending time with Carolina, we see Rose begin to narrate for us and say, the conversation tonight was entirely around Carolina again. Carolina comes back and they have a confrontation where Rose is essentially, pointing the finger at Carolina for the position that Rose now finds herself in, and then addresses, I confided in you, and you went and used that information to further your relationship with Grant. And then, we hear her in a voiceover say, she's really struggling. She's been fighting her feelings. She's having a really hard time, really trying to fight through, and she just can't do it anymore. And she ultimately decides to self-eliminate. It's unclear how much of this might have been conscious, like premeditated in a way, because she may have foreseen that she was going to be eliminated anyway, and this was a way that she could maybe have some control in her part of the story, or how much of it might have been an impulsive decision because she seemed like at the verge of a panic attack. But ultimately, she does, directly talk to Grant and say that she thinks what's best for her in all of this is to go home, and she does, like, kind of unceremoniously. And
the important thing here to note is, and I said last week, I fully thought she was going home last week. I thought she got saved by the drama that happened, right? And she had to know that she was going home this week. And if there was any question, any doubt, look at Grant's reaction. He did not even pretend to hesitate for a second about trying to convince her, right? I mean, the words weren't even out of her mouth. And he's like, well, I respect your decision, right? Not even a frown, right? I mean, so she was going home. It was obvious and clear. I do think that there's probably a good chunk of her that kind of knew that, and this was a way to just kind of, end the turmoil, right?
Yeah.
So
I agree.
And ultimately, it's the right call. Like, hey, listen, go. Like, doesn't matter if you self-eliminate or whatever. Like, you go out on your own. Go out on your own terms, right? Yep. So, and with that,
we're in the rose ceremony.
Jesse says it's time for the rose ceremony, and it's not clear if the other women get time. They talked a lot about wanting to get time, and kind of the way they edited it suggested that they didn't get the time. So we'll see. So the rose ceremony is starting with 10 people. We've already got one self-elimination, so we're down to 9, and we need to drop down to 7. So we are losing 2 people. However, we have 2 date roses, and those are Dena and Saraphina. So we end up getting 5 roses, and they go in order: Latia, Juliana, Alex, Zoe, and Carolina. Meaning our eliminations are Natalie and Parisa. So, surprises?
None. I'm bummed to see Parisa leave, but I'm pretty confident we're going to see her on Paradise.
I think she's going to be great. I loved her outro. Yeah, I mean, obviously I thought Carolina was going to get saved by production. And the only real viable swap maybe would have been Parisa for Zoe. But again, Grant has not seen the Zoe drama. He's only seen the side of Zoe he likes, and she had a good week. So it's just kind of hard. Latia's not going anywhere. Juliana's not going anywhere. Alex is great. And Carolina's a production pick. So it just kind of felt like there was just no space left. And Natalie, while Natalie seems like a sweetheart and seems in many ways the most equipped to be the mother of his children. In fact, of the one characteristic he keeps saying he wants, she's the most equipped for it. She's also kind of the youngest and has never really made a mark in this competition. No. So that's it. Those are our top 7. And Rose and Thorn?
Sure.
I'm happy you asked about my rose this week.
Love it. My thorn this week.
I hated to see that. All right. What is your rose this week?
My rose, I've already alluded to it. My rose goes to Grant this week. I feel bad for the season that he's having, that it is lackluster, but that is not without Grant, I think, still doing a good job, and especially in some of these one-on-one conversations that he's having. I've already talked about why I think he deserves my rose, but I just want to highlight Grant's intentionality yet again. And while, yes, he could do a better job dealing with kind of the emotional pieces and the drama of the women and not being so sucked in, and we still have half a season to go. Maybe he'll get his bearings and be a little bit sturdier, but I think he deserves my rose this week.
Yeah. So I was going to give Grant the rose for the comment from earlier that I really liked, but since we already talked about that, I'm actually going to I'm going to go with Parisa. So here's the thing about Parisa. I really was kind of like put off by her in the first episode, but she's kind of grown on me. And her outro was really fantastic because it showed like a lot of self-awareness. It's like, oh, maybe I talk too much about my rocks. And you know what? I kind of sound a little crazy, you know? And it was just like, but it was fun and funny. And it was like, oh, you know what? You get it. You know how you come across. And you know, when all the other cast members were sort of falling down, you know, she was like this like levity where it's like, okay, she's on the screen. We're going to have a little bit of fun here for a second. So, you know, I didn't think that I was going to enjoy Parisa. You know, just be waiting for her to go home. But you know what? She grew on me. I'm a Parisa fan. I'm looking forward to seeing what she does on BIP.
Yeah.
Again, we're not.
We have no spoilers.
We have no spoilers. Assuming. We don't know anything. I'm just assuming. I think she'll be great on BIP. Yeah. So, yep. Your thorn.
I think my thorn this week, this might be a cop-out, is for the dates. Like, we are now 4 episodes in, you know, we've had, you know, 10 dates so far at least. Like, this is The Bachelor. Like, where are the good dates?
Where's the money?
Yeah,
where's the budget?
So these 3 dates in particular were less good versions of other dates we've had in the past.
Yeah.
And I think, though, you know, the city date could have been better. I think we just saw a cliff jumping date or whatever, a height thing the week before, and that was better. And the
riding donkeys.
Yeah. You know, it was just not it. So mine goes to the dates. How about you?
I haven't complained about this in a couple seasons, but the last 2 episodes, I feel like I've really felt the hand of production, and I hate the hand of production, right? You know, I want production to be Adam Smith and the Invisible Hand. Like, I don't want to feel it. I want it really takes me out of the show. But Rose getting a rose last episode, and you know, Carolina getting a rose this episode. You know, you almost feel like the Juliana pulling Carolina was like a little unnatural and feels like production was trying to make something happen. Yeah. So they're like, you know, telling to Juliana, pull her and talk to her.
Sure.
It just felt really contrived in a way that like the last couple seasons haven't felt that bad.
I mean, for all of the criticism that we gave Jen Tran and her season, I never knew who she was going to pick. And that's what made the show like fun to watch. And this just feels like we knew exactly.
There's no surprises.
No surprises. So I hear you on that.
All right. I think that's it for this week.
All right. So we will be back next week with episode 5 of Grant's season of The Bachelor, where we will be meeting you, talking all about Scotland, which I'm excited for. Also, if you are watching Love is Blind, like we are, we already have 2 episodes out on Love is Blind, separated the pod episodes into 2 different episodes. So we have an episode all about pods 1 through 3 episodes, and then 4 through 6 in another. And then you're going to get more from us, I guess, and through March for Love is Blind. We're going to be watching that in tandem with this show. So all the more reason to subscribe if you are into reality TV and dissecting it in the way that we are. If you also want to catch up with us on social media, you can follow us at Reactivity TV. You can follow me at Amy Albero, LCSW. We'll be back next week and sometime in between with more. We'll see you then. Take care. Bye.
See ya.